control. I got two Bible audio, my Bible sermon audio I create because I'm a vision impairment. I need to do this. It's very difficult for me. I will do it because I want to keep moving forward in my life. Here goes. God bless you.
You know, if you just look around today, sometimes it really feels like the noise is just winning. But maybe even more than the chaos out there, have you ever felt like your own mind is a kind of battlefield? Like this constant war zone inside? Doubt, fear, anger, negativity, all fighting for control. How do you even begin to hold on to real deep peace when the world, or maybe just your internal monologue, feels so troubled?
That internal siege. Yeah, that's exactly what we're diving into today. And we got a pretty powerful blueprint for defense, actually. We're doing a deep dive into an analysis of Philippians 4, specifically verses 8 through 10. It gives us maybe one of the most structured, actionable guides on how to guard your mind. Fortify your heart against that constant internal attack.
And what makes this advice just so compelling? It's the context, isn't it? I mean, this wasn't written on some peaceful retreat. The Apostle Paul wrote these words while he was under Roman custody. Okay, maybe house arrest, but still chained to a guard 24/7, waiting for a trial that could, very likely, end his life.
Exactly. Constant uncertainty. Facing, really, the ultimate storm. And yet, from that place, that confinement, he's talking about joy, about peace. So our mission here in this deep dive is to unpack the key to victory Paul lays out. That phrase, meditate on these things, and sort of reveal his three-part path to building this profound, lasting internal strength, no matter what's happening outside.
Okay, let's definitely unpack that. We start with verse 8, which feels like the blueprint for fortification. The core idea seems pretty straightforward, like your thoughts. They're the building blocks for your character. And your character, well, that shapes your destiny. If you keep focusing on the lack, the fight, what's wrong, you just build a house of worry.
Right, and that structure just collapses, doesn't it? The shift has to be total. Focus on what is right. And Paul's instruction here to meditate, that's crucial. It's definitely not that passive worldly idea of just emptying your mind. No, it's active. It's an intentional filter for your thoughts, a deliberate defense against mental contamination, if you will. You're consciously choosing which materials get into your mental construction project.
It's like an aggressive act of curating your own mind. And Paul doesn't leave us guessing about the quality of materials, does he? He gives us a really specific list. 6 categories our minds should dwell on. Maybe we should spend some time on these, because the details really matter here.
Absolutely. The first one, maybe the most foundational, is whatever is true. I mean, in a world overflowing with information and disinformation, this means actively grounding your thinking in reliable sources of truth. For Paul, that was God's word, that unshakable reality that goes beyond just feelings or, temporary situations. If you build your mental house on shifting sands, like feelings or anxious what-ifs, it's going to shake. You need concrete truth.
Wow, that cuts right through all the modern noise, doesn't it? An ancient solution for information overload. Okay, the next two often seem paired. Noble and just. What's Paul getting at with noble? The Greek is semna, right?
Semna, yes. It's quite profound. It means worthy of respect, honorable, serious, having gravitas. It suggests your internal chatter should reflect the dignity of who you are, your calling. Noble thoughts lift you up, they don't degrade. When you choose noble thoughts, you're actively refusing cynicism or self-pity, things that tear down your self-respect.
So holding yourself and your thoughts to a higher standard, resisting that urge to slide into the trivial or dishonorable just because it's easier, and just fits right in there. Righteousness, moral correctness, keeping your mind free from wanting revenge or holding on to bitterness.
Precisely. Then we shift a bit into the emotional and maybe aesthetic side with pure and lovely. Purity in thought is like, mental hygiene. It keeps the mind free from contamination. Think about the pollution of impure motives or selfish desires. Paul's saying, scrub those out.
And lovely feels like the antidote then, filling the mind with love, mercy, forgiveness. If pure cleans the slate, lovely is about actively painting something beautiful back on it, resisting that urge to nurse grudges or, fuel internal resentment.
Well put. And finally, the last category seems to cover both inside and out of good report. This refers to things that are well spoken of, commendable, things worthy of praise. This is like Paul's first century directive on managing your input and your output. What media are you consuming? What conversations are you part of? Are they tearing down or building up?
That really changes the game for modern life, doesn't it? It makes us put a strict filter on our social media, our interactions. It's not just what we think, it's the whole ecosystem feeding those thoughts.
Exactly. The synthesis of verse 8, the blueprint, is clear. Fill your mind with God's goodness, these 6 things: true, noble, just, pure, lovely, of good report. And it creates this internal overflow, peace. But as you said, Paul never lets us get comfortable just thinking good thoughts.
Right, and here's where it gets really practical. Paul bridges belief to action in verse 9. This feels like the construction phase. He says, "The things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do."
A critical move. He offers himself as a model, yes, but he's careful, isn't he? He positions himself as a model imitating Christ. It just reinforces that the Christian life isn't fundamentally about intellectual debates or just agreeing mentally. It's about practice, obedience, observable behavior. It's the difference between, say, knowing how to build a wall and actually laying the bricks.
So the peace we're looking for isn't just some random feeling that pops up from good thinking. It's the direct result, the promised consequence of doing what we've learned and following those godly examples.
And the promise tied to that obedience, it's staggering. Paul doesn't just offer the peace of God, which, don't get me wrong, is a wonderful feeling. He promises the God of peace will be with you. The magnitude of that distinction, it's fascinating.
Wait, let's pause there a second. That subtle shift in wording is incredibly powerful. You're saying the promise isn't just a feeling of calm, but the actual presence of God walking alongside the person who obeys.
Exactly that. When you walk in obedience, you're not just getting a temporary calm. You are inviting the source of all peace right into your situation. You can't separate the peace from the presence. They come together. When you choose to practice the things from verses 8 and 9, the God of peace accompanies you. That means the source of your strength, your fortification, is internal, it's constant, and it doesn't depend on external threats.
That completely reframes how we think about the Christian life, really. It's not just a gift we passively receive, it's an accompaniment we, in a sense, step into through diligent practice. Okay, so moving to the final piece of this analysis, verse 10, Paul seems to focus on the sustenance system for our internal fortress, gratitude.
Yes, and it's maybe the most touching verse here, especially when you remember he's literally in chains. Paul expresses this immense gratitude to the Philippians because their care for him has flourished again. This is the community finally managing to send him support after apparently a period of silence.
Think he's in prison, dependent on outside help. And instead of focusing on the delay or the hardship he must have faced while they were quiet, he focuses on the positive thing that just happened.
It shows such incredible character and theological depth, too. He gives this cheerful, really generous interpretation of their delay.
Hi.
He says, you surely did care, but you lacked opportunity. You chose to trust their hearts and God's timing rather than getting stuck on the temporary lack or, judging their motives.
That is such a crucial lesson for sustaining peace, isn't it? When support or blessings are delayed, whether it's money or comfort from people or an answer to prayer, it's so tempting to get bitter or cynical.
And cynicism is the exact opposite of those noble thoughts we talked about. Paul teaches us here that gratitude itself actually renews the spirit. It strengthens faith. His perspective suggests that sometimes a blessing is delayed, not because it's denied, but because the right opportunity is being prepared. Maybe for us, maybe for the giver. He chose to rejoice in what was provided right then, reinforcing his own faith. Gratitude is like the spiritual fuel keeping the fortress running.
Okay, so if we pull this whole deep dive together, the source material gives us a really clear 3-step path to finding that internal strength, that lasting peace Paul had even in prison.
It really is the ultimate playbook. Step 1, the blueprint. Guard your thoughts.
Yeah.
Actively meditate on what's true, noble, just, pure, lovely, and of good report. Use that filter every day.
Step 2, the construction. Practice the word. Do what you've learned. Consciously follow godly examples. The Christian life has to be practiced, not just thought about.
And finally, step 3, the sustenance. Walk in gratitude. Rejoice even when things are tough. Trust the timing of provision. Don't let delays breed bitterness. Celebrate when things finally flourish.
And that staggering central promise holds. When you commit to these 3 things, disciplining your mind, practicing obedience, and keeping a grateful heart, the God of peace won't just give you temporary relief, he will dwell with you permanently.
Yeah, if we circle back to the beginning, Paul's whole message is that the structure of your inner focus really determines the quality of your outer life. If your mind gets consumed by all the fear and negativity that just dominates our feeds and news cycles, peace, it flees. But by installing this spiritual, this ethical blueprint, you build something unshakable, a fortress.
Paul found that kind of unshakable peace while chained to a Roman guard. It kept him strong in probably the biggest storm of his life. So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is this. If applying these principles could build that kind of strength in a literal prison cell, just imagine the peace, the resilience they could build in the storms of your own life, the anxieties, the conflicts, the worries that often feel like our own kind of prisons. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Okay, this is the second sermon now.
Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through the sources, pull out the core ideas, and basically give you the essentials so you're up to speed. Today, we're tackling something huge, really. This idea that, well, society often uses one main yardstick for success.
Material wealth, right?
Exactly, possessions, abundance. But our sources today really challenge that. They asked, if you're surrounded by all this stuff, what actually makes for a meaningful life? A fulfilled one.
It's a counter narrative suggesting that maybe this cultural focus on acquiring things, well, maybe it leads somewhere kind of empty.
So we've got insights from different traditions, philosophy, economic thought even.
Yeah, and they often land in a similar place. The main text we're really digging into today is a powerful one, Luke 12:15. It gives this really stark warning.
What does it say?
It says, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. That watch out, it grabs you, doesn't it?
It does. Serious tone.
Absolutely. So our goal, our mission for this deep dive is to unpack why. Why does this ancient wisdom see materialism, or more specifically, greed, as such, well, a serious and dangerous trap?
And what's the alternative path?
And what the alternative looks like, exactly.
Okay, so let's get into that word greed. Because the source, right away, makes a really important point here.
Crucial point.
It's not saying money is bad or having things is bad. The warning is specifically about greed.
Yes.
And it's described almost like a silent thief. Something that doesn't necessarily make a big entrance.
Right. It can sneak in quietly, maybe when you think you're just being responsible or,
Prudent, even.
prudent, yeah. And that's why defining it carefully is so important. If we mix up, say, healthy ambition with greed, we miss the whole point.
So how do we define it then, if it's not just wanting more?
It's about satisfaction, or rather, the lack of it. Greed, according to these sources, isn't just wanting more. It's this feeling of never being satisfied no matter what you have right now.
Okay, so it's internal.
It's a heart condition, totally separate from your net worth on paper. You could have very little, materially speaking, and still be consumed by that dissatisfaction. Or have immense wealth and still feel that relentless need to chase the next bigger thing just for that fleeting sense of, completion.
Right.
The source puts it plainly, greed is not measured by your bank account, it's measured by your heart.
Okay, but hang on. Our culture, especially financial culture, social media, constantly tells us striving, accumulating. That's virtuous.
Yeah.
Wealth equals happiness, right? That's the message.
It absolutely is.
So how do we spot that shift?
Yeah.
When does healthy ambition, let's say, curdle into this destructive greed the source warns about? It seems subtle.
It is subtle, and that's the diagnostic challenge. The source suggests looking at who's in control. Is the money serving you, or are you serving the money? There's another related text often cited, 1 Timothy 6.0. It's really specific. It says, the root problem isn't money itself, but the love of money.
The attachment.
Precisely. When money goes from being a tool you use to being the master of your heart, your decisions, your emotions.
And that's when you lose things like peace, purpose.
That's exactly what the sources suggest. When money takes control, those fundamental things start to erode. The danger isn't the asset, it's the affection, the dependence you place on the asset.
So greed is like this desire for control through possessions.
But paradoxically, it ends with the possessions controlling you.
Okay, that connects some dots.
Yeah.
Because you hear these stories, right? People who seem to have achieved everything, fame, fortune, huge followings, but they talk about feeling empty or lost.
All the time.
Which leads right into the second big idea from the source. Possessions can't define your identity.
Fundamentally, yeah.
It's a simple idea, but profound. Possessions can fill your hands, maybe your garage,
Fill your house, definitely.
but they can't fill your soul or your heart. The source points out, even if you have all those external markers, fame, fortune, followers, you can still feel hollow inside.
Because your sense of self, your worth, is tied to something external. something fleeting, something that can be taken away.
Right.
And the source uses these really vivid contrasts to hammer this home, to show what money can't buy.
Okay, like what?
Well, things like this. You can buy comfort, sure, a nice chair, a warm coat, but you can't buy peace.
Big difference.
Huge. You can buy pleasure, momentary thrills, but you can't buy deep, abiding joy.
Okay.
And maybe the sharpest one. You can buy a house, a structure, but you can't buy a home. The feeling, the connection.
That comfort versus peace distinction.
Yeah.
That's powerful. We're sort of trained to think that if we just get comfortable enough, peace will follow automatically.
Right. Maximize comfort, achieve peace. But the source argues they aren't the same, especially if your identity is wrapped up in the comfort.
Why not?
Because comfort depends on external things staying stable. Your job, your health, the market.
Things that fluctuate.
Exactly. Peace, as it's defined here, is internal. It's resilience. It's something that can stick around even when external circumstances go sideways. Possessions offer comfort, maybe, but not that inner stability.
So where does that stability come from, according to the source?
It argues that real, overflowing life happens when your identity is anchored somewhere else, somewhere non-material.
Okay.
The source specifically points to a relationship, identifying the anchor as being found in Christ, leading to a different kind of wealth.
Not financial wealth.
No, wealth measured in things like love, faith, grace, and eternal life. These are presented as the only things that can actually fill that deep, sort of spiritual vacuum that possessions always fail to fill.
Okay, that makes sense. And it sets up the next big challenge in the source material, doesn't it? This idea of being rich toward God.
Exactly. And it's not just abstract theory. Right after the warning about greed, there's this short, pretty stark parable.
Rich man and his barns.
That's the one. He has this amazing harvest, way more than he expected.
Good problem to have, you'd think.
You'd think. But his reaction is interesting. He thinks, okay, I need bigger barns. I'll tear down the old ones, build massive new ones.
To store it all up.
Yeah, and his internal talk is all about himself. I will do this, my crops, my goods, my soul. Telling himself, okay, soul, you've got plenty stored up for years. Relax. Eat, drink, be merry.
Sounds like a retirement plan.
It does. But then comes the twist. That very night, the source says, his soul was required of him. His life ended.
Wow. Okay, so what was his mistake? Was it having the big harvest? Being rich?
Not according to the analysis here. The problem wasn't the wealth itself. It was the intense self-focus. The planning was all about him, hoarding for himself.
And the assumption that his future security was guaranteed just because he had stuff stored up.
Exactly. He was banking entirely on physical assets for long-term security, completely ignoring, well, mortality, the bigger picture.
So his fatal flaw.
The reason he's called foolish in the text is that he stored up treasures for himself, but was not rich toward God. He basically got the purpose of his blessings completely backward.
Okay, so that begs the question. What does it mean practically to be rich toward God? Is it just like writing bigger checks to charity? Or is it more fundamental?
It seems much more fundamental. It requires a shift in perspective, moving from seeing resources as something you own to seeing them as something you steward.
Ownership versus stewardship.
Right. Being rich toward God is described as living a life marked by, well, radical generosity, deep gratitude, and godliness. It means using whatever you have, resources, skills, time, money, intentionally for the benefit of others.
Instead of clinging to it.
Instead of clutching it tightly, yeah. Out of fear or self-absorption. The focus flips entirely from accumulation, getting bigger barns, to distribution and impact.
If you see it as ownership, you want more storage.
Makes sense. If you see it as stewardship, as managing something entrusted to you, the goal becomes maximizing its positive effect, its blessing for others.
So this reframes blessings, doesn't it? The resources we receive, they're presented almost as a kind of test.
That's a strong theme, yes. Not a test of your ability to earn, maybe, but a test of your heart, a test of trust.
How so? A test of trust.
Well, if you view every resource, every blessing as a test, then giving it away or using it for others becomes an act of trust.
Trust can what?
Trust that your ultimate security doesn't come from the size of your pile, but from the source of the pile, the ultimate provider. It's like you're declaring, my reliance isn't here, in my barn, it's elsewhere.
And the source suggests that's how you get back the peace and purpose that the love of money steals away.
That seems to be the mechanism, that trust is the antidote to greed. Greed thrives on fear, right? Fear of not having enough, fear of losing comfort.
Yeah, scarcity mindset.
Exactly. Whereas generosity, driven by this stewardship idea, is rooted in trust. Trust that there's an abundance beyond what you can physically see and hoard.
Which really changes the whole relationship between a person and their stuff.
Fundamentally. And that brings us back to the core message weaving through all these sources.
Which is,
Life is found in the heart, not the wallet. Plain and simple. Guarding against greed isn't just like a moral suggestion. It's presented as vital because greed is that silent thief.
stealing joy, peace.
Contentment, meaning all the things that make life truly rich, regardless of your material circumstances.
So shifting focus away from just acquiring things towards these non-material pursuits, grace, mercy, love, connection.
That's where the source says true abundance lies. It completely flips the script on how society normally keeps score.
So when it all comes down to it, what's the ultimate measure? How should we evaluate a life according to this perspective?
The source is pretty direct on this. It concludes that the true measure is not about how much we've gathered. It's not the size of the barns.
Right.
It's about how much we've given, how deeply we've loved, and how faithfully we've served. It swaps the metric of accumulation for the metric of contribution, of impact, of relationship.
That leaves us with a lot to think about.
Definitely. And perhaps a final thought for you, the listener, to carry away this week based on this framework. If material possessions really are viewed as just a test, how may shifting your own view, thinking less ownership, more stewardship regarding your resources, how might that actually change your day-to-day decisions about your time, about your money?
Where's the real return on investment then?
Exactly. Something to consider as you think about your own scorecard for a meaningful life.